So do you think the planet is round or flat? In a moment, Flat Earth Dave joins us. We're going to talk about that on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. George Noory with you. Let me tell you about our special guest, David Weiss, former commercial solar power developer and entrepreneur. David has been researching the flat Earth hypothesis since 2015. He's the creator of the Flat Earth Sun, Moon, and Zodiac Clock app. And he's got a new movie called The Next Level, which you can find out at thenextlevel2022.com, which we have linked up for you at coasttocoastam.com. David, welcome to the show. I'm looking forward to this one with you tonight.
George, thanks so much for having me. Been a Coast listener for decades, I think, and it's an honor to be here and finally talk to you.
Thank you. And what's going on in the world of solar power, by the way? Is that still moving along or not?
No, it's moving along. With rising electric rates, it makes a lot of sense. It depends on where you live and the incentives and what's going on. So it's definitely something to look into if you have a place to put them.
Yeah, if you're definitely in a sunny region, and it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Sure.
All right.
So
go ahead. No, you first.
Yeah. So the idea of a flat Earth mixed in a heliocentric, the globe model, is absolute insanity. If we look at the thumbnail that your producers chose to put on the website, they Googled flat Earth, and Google served them a picture of a flat disk or a turnip floating in heliocentric space. No flat earther thinks that. So we want to wipe that from our minds. And tonight, what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce. I'm not here to convince you that the Earth is flat. I'm here to get rid of ideas of what flat Earth is, which it isn't, and help you see what the heliocentric model is. And then I'm going to ask you to make up your own minds and look, because the best way to hide something is to make it look so ridiculous that you refuse to look. And one thing flat earthers all have in common is we all thought flat Earth was stupid. We all refused to look when we first heard about it. But then somebody came along and pointed some things out, and then we all went in it, not to prove it, to disprove it. We went in to prove the globe and disprove flat Earth, and that's how you become a flat earther. So tonight I'm going to point to a whole bunch of doors that you've never seen, and it's up to you whether you go through them and take a look.
Fair enough. Now, when you were a little boy, what did you think about space? What did you think about planet Earth? What did you think about the moon? It seems like every object is round. What did you think of all that?
George, I loved space. I loved all of that stuff, and that's by design. Before we could even talk, our parents probably put a mobile of the solar system over our head, over our cribs. We had NASA sheets. Sesame Street had astronauts on. Walt Disney, have astronauts on. It's all about globe programming. So there's a lot of areas we can go. We're going to just try to stay focused tonight. I may bring up a little bit of math. Don't short circuit. It's really easy stuff. Really easy. Everything that we look into, and again, once you start understanding what flat Earth is. So real quick, let me just say what flat Earth isn't. We're not a disk floating in space with other flat planets or round planets. Take that off the table. You have to get the idea of space off the table. So what is flat Earth? Well, think about this. Large bodies of water at rest lay flat, scientifically, testably, provably, measurably flat. Okay? So the flat Earth is like a pond. Think about a pond. What holds a pond in? And the answer is it's the shoreline that surrounds the water. It's consistently higher than the level of the water. That holds the water. So water needs lateral pressure. Water lays flat. And we live in what I call the Antarctic Basin. They tell us Antarctica is a continent at the bottom of the ball. Just like we look at our globes, and it shows a continent at the bottom of the ball. But in reality, Antarctica is the land that surrounds the world pond. They tell us Antarctica is the highest land on Earth. Okay, that's very interesting. Well, the highest land on Earth could contain us. So think of all of the oceans of the world as a giant pond, all of the continents and islands as islands within that pond. The shoreline of our pond is Antarctica. So if you're on that lake and you're sailing around and you sail to the edge of the lake, you don't fall off into space. You step up onto the land. Okay? So now imagine at the center of that lake, we have a mountain, and that mountain is magnetic. Okay, so we'll call that the North Pole at the center of our flat lake, just like water lays flat. So if you're on a boat on the lake and you have a compass, that compass is going to point towards the center of the lake. No matter where you are, the north needle is going to point at the center of the lake. Now, if you try to go east or west, which is 90 degrees to that needle, that's not a straight line. Think about it. You have to go in a circle around, equidistant from that center. So if I left an island that I'll call New York and I went east, I have to keep turning to the left to maintain my heading of 90 degrees. And before I know it, I'm in California and I'm back in New York again, and I've circumnavigated the North Pole in the center of the lake. If I go west, same thing. Guess what? Billions with a B of people have circumnavigated the world east and west.
Now let me ask you this, though, David. Now when astronauts have taken pictures of planet Earth, they're round pictures. I mean, are you saying that those aren't authentic pictures, or that they are?
Well, NASA admits that they don't have any photos of Earth other than the one that was taken from the moon. And we took that picture from their website, put it into Photoshop, cranked up the levels, and for some reason there is a square box around the planet Earth. Now, I wasn't there. I was a small child when all of this happened.
Mm-hmm.
I want to stay away from the moon. I want to point to some other things, and then we can figure out what's going on with the moon missions and everything else later. That's a whole nother show.
Okay. Now, why do they call it the Flat Earth Group?
Well, the one thing is when you search, Google delivers you what they want you to find, and you'll find the Flat Earth Society. You'll find those images of discs floating in space. We're not the Flat Earth Society. The Flat Earth Society is a not sure who runs it, but it seems to be a government-run disinformation site. It's got a tiny bit of truth and a lot of nonsense. If you Google Flat Earth, end up on the Flat Earth Society, you will look at it for 5 or 10 minutes, and then you will never look at Flat Earth again because you'll say it's the dumbest thing ever.
Right.
No Flat Earther looks at none of us even ever look at the Flat Earth Society because it's absolute, complete and total nonsense.
So you would agree then that what they are doing is preposterous?
Oh, absolutely. Your idea of Flat Earth is absolutely preposterous. I'm surprised you invited me on the show. I know that you gave a little resistance, but your producer insisted that I come on, so thank you for having me.
Actually, I didn't. She says, do you want to do a show on the Flat Earth? And I said, well, who's the person? And she said, well, his name's David Weiss. He's an expert in this, and he's into it in a big way. And I said, yeah, let's give it a shot. And here you are.
Very good. Well, thank you. So just finishing my lake model. So we can circle east and west. Well, billions of people have circumnavigated the world east and west. Guess what nobody's ever done is circumnavigated south. Now, there's a couple of royal people that claim they've done it, but when you look into it, you can see that they've faked things, that their route actually didn't do what they say. But south, now think about south. South is every direction away from north. So no matter where you are on that lake, if you put your back to the center of the lake and then walk away from it or sail away from it or fly away from it, you are heading south. And then if you keep going south, guess what? You're going to get to the end of our pond, not the end of the world, the end of our pond. That's the shoreline of Antarctica. You climb up onto that elevated land and you start walking away. And now you're a mile away, 5 miles away. You can't even see the lake anymore, right? And you're going, I'm doing a smaller model, by the way. And you go, let's say you go 100 miles, and then all of a sudden you find another lake. Think about that. Let me ask you a quick question, George.
Sure.
Do you believe in life on other continents?
Yes.
Okay, life on other continents. But if you had never seen life on other continents, it would just be a belief. Well, that's kind of like my analogy for believing in life on other planets. And we're going to talk about space versus flat Earth. Space is scientifically impossible, where flat Earth is, well, provable. We live on a flat, level plane. All of our senses, all of our measurements, every scientific test done through history by accredited scientists that prove axial rotation, the spinning of the Earth, or curvature of the Earth has failed and proven the opposite, but they don't teach us that in school. And at the end, for the last segment, you're going to want to ask before then, why would they lie? Why all of this? And we'll answer that in the last segment, because let's look at the crime
which
first.
Is an important question.
It is my favorite question, but let's not address it until we have a reason to ask why the lie.
Do me a favor, though. Paint us a picture paint us a visual picture of you 300, 400 miles out in space looking back at the planet, what it would look like.
Well, I don't know if anyone can get up to 300, 400 miles in space because we're talking about space. We don't believe space is as described. Space, they tell us, is a vacuum, a void, no air, no pressure. Well, we live in a pressurized system. Well, nowhere in science, in a lab or in nature, can you have high pressure next to low pressure, let alone no pressure, and without a physical barrier, right? When you have a soda can and you crack the top, it goes, psst, and that's because the pressure is equalizing, right? And it doesn't matter if it'll go up, down, sideways. Gravity's not going to hold that pressure in the can when you open it. So why doesn't space suck all of the air off of Earth? And the only answer that the heliocentric believers can say is gravity is holding it down. But that doesn't work, because if I had a shoebox in a room and I was holding it in the air and I sucked all of the air out of that room in a gravity system where you believe it, that air should stay in the shoebox because it's holding it in. But that doesn't work. I can take a straw and I could suck air and water up and away from the Earth with very little low pressure in my mouth and lungs, and that just pulls it up and away. So we have a scientific problem right now. We have high pressure next to low pressure without a vacuum.
I know,
right?
but if I asked you to paint me a picture of what you think Earth looks like from afar, what would that picture look like?
Well, George, when you move away from any lit thing in the distance, it would look like a circle. You would see a circle.
Okay.
And I always say that if you took a flat earther and a globe believer up, 3,000 miles or whatever you said, a couple hundred miles up, they would see the Earth get smaller and smaller in the distance. The globe believer would say, oh, there's the Earth globe. And the flat earther would be saying, oh, there's the flat Earth pond being lit. You can't tell the size or shape of something unless you know the size or the distance, or you can actually physically measure it.
Well, when you look at the moon from Earth, what are you looking at?
Well, that's a great question. The moon and the sun, nobody even knows if they're physical objects at all. Now, like if you look later today, people will have, the moon will be up in the sky in the afternoon. Take a look at it, all the listeners. Go out and look at the moon, and you can see that moon that we're seeing, whatever it is within the Earth system. You can see blue sky behind it. You can see blue sky through the dark spots, and then at nighttime, those dark spots will turn black. I don't know what the moon is. I don't know anything because I can't go there. All we can say is we're looking at it. The problem with looking at the moons and planets is they don't add up scientifically. We talk about the brightness of the planets and the moon for a second.
Go ahead.
So there's a thing, here's a little math. It's called the inverse square law of light. Very simple. Every time you double the distance to a light, it's 1/4 of the brightness. Or the reverse is every time you get halfway closer to the light, it's 4 times brighter. So if we're looking at the moon, a full moon, in the middle of nowhere, I can read a book by it. I can drive with my lights off because the moon is, bright enough to light up the road. It's casting shadows on the ground. It's bright. Let's just say that's 1 lumen. If I went halfway to the moon, it's now 4 lumens. And if I went halfway again, it's now 16 lumens. And cut that in half, it's now 64 lumens. You do that all the way to 100 miles where the astronauts took a picture of the moon, the famous picture of the moon.
Yes.
It would be 64 times brighter than we see the sun from Earth for us to see it. Now, this is globe math. This is real science. So the brightness doesn't work. When we look at Jupiter in the sky, I could see Jupiter in the sky many nights. It's one of the brighter stars in the sky, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, right? It's brighter than stars. Well, you have to believe that Jupiter, this gaseous planet with a sun that's smaller than we see the sun because it's much farther away, that smaller star-like sun is lighting up Jupiter. It's reflecting off of the non-reflective surface, coming all the way back to Earth, ignoring the inverse square law of light, and it's brighter than any star. I'm sorry, that doesn't add up.
Well, that's an interesting question that you've just presented, because that is a paradox, and I've always wondered about that. I've always wondered how the sun would, from Jupiter, the sun would look like a little dot. How could that little dot illuminate the planet as much as it does?
Very good. Step 1 complete. So let's look at the distances to the sun. So they tell us the sun in the heliocentric model is like a big yoga ball, and if the sun was a yoga ball, the Earth is a marble or a BB next to it. So imagine if the sun was just a mile over your head and you looked up, it would fill the entire sky edge to edge. It would just fill up everything.
You'd see nothing else but that. That's right.
Right. So now we move it 93 million miles away. Where they tell us, and because it's going away, perspective makes it smaller, and now it's the size of a coin held at arm's length. Nickel, quarter, dime, whatever.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
And so now, George, if I doubled that distance, how much smaller would it get?
It should get smaller by half at least.
Okay, very good. So it's 8 light minutes away. They tell us. So if we double it, that's 16 light minutes. If we double that again,
32
4 times farther, it would be a light half hour. If we doubled that again, it would be a light hour. Do you think you could see the sun at a light hour away, knowing how much it reduced? Right. So now think about this. Polaris, our North Star, which everybody in the northern part of the world, the inner part of the world, can see with your naked eye. It's pretty bright. They tell us it's about 48 times bigger than our sun. Well, at a light hour, we couldn't see the sun. So an hour times 48 times bigger. So at 2 light days away, we couldn't see Polaris. But they tell us Polaris is 433 light years away. Your mind can't even calculate the magnitude of that discrepancy.
Truly remarkable. It really is. How many people in your organization, in your group, are there?
It's not an organization, and there's people all over the Earth plane. Flat Earth, our history is not what they tell us. And the Flat Earth was being taught here in public schools in America as early as the 1950s, early 60s, but going way back. I interviewed a woman named Ruth, 102 years old, back in 2020. I was interviewing her about some other stuff, World's Fairs and whatnot, and her memory was so good. I asked her what they taught her in school about the Earth. That's all I said, and she said they taught me the Earth was flat, and that was in Hamden Public School here in Connecticut.
Really? That's weird.
And that scene is actually in my movie, The Next Level 2022.com. If anybody has the courage to sit down and watch this excellent produced movie by Hibbler Productions, there'll be no turning back. But I have to warn you, if you watch that movie, you are going to be a globe denier at the least.
Interesting take. We're going to take a break pretty soon, David, and come back. Do you think what we're looking at with these so-called round pictures of whatever is an illusion?
No, George. If I look up at the lights in my ceiling, they don't dictate the shape of my floor. When I look through binoculars, telescope, my P1000 camera at Saturn, I see a sphere. It looks like a sphere. I would guess it's a sphere, but it has no relation to the shape of the Earth because they're not, planets are not what they tell us. Disney and NASA provide us all of the images. They don't provide us any photos. NASA doesn't provide any photos. They call them images and pictures.
So you're saying the Earth is not a sphere, but it's not what we would call flat. So what could it be?
The Earth is a level plane. The way I describe it is it's the basement of the universe. What's below the Earth? Nobody knows what's inside the Earth. The deepest hole ever dug is not even 8 miles. And when they were digging that hole, they didn't know. They were wrong every step of the way. Oh, there's no more water. They hit water. Oh, there's no more rocks. They hit rocks. And then just before 8 miles, they hit an impenetrable barrier, and nobody can go any deeper. But then all of a sudden, they know the next 4,000 miles to the center, and they show us that meme of all of the layers of Earth. That's just a meme. There's no scientific evidence at all, but it's in our textbooks, in our banker.
All right, hold on, David. We're at a break. We'll come back and talk more about this. Truly remarkable. And don't forget his movie. We got the link at coasttocoastam.com. We're going to let you chime in next hour. We'll take calls with David Weiss as we talk about the flatearthdave.com. That's one of his websites, the flatearthpodcast.com. And again, his movie website is thenextlevel2022.com, which also is linked up at coasttocoastam.com. And welcome back to Coast to Coast. George Noory with you, David Weiss with us. David, what was that aha moment for you when you figured out, I believe this, and this is what I'm going to believe.
Yeah, one of them, well, I went into it really with a negative attitude, and I kept seeing these images, these videos of ships going over the horizon that weren't really going over the horizon. So I went out and spent about $1,000 on a super zoom P900 camera, tripod, and I went to my beach, and I was zooming in on things that should be behind the physical curve. So in this segment, George, I want to go over some of those proofs like that.
Sure.
I also want to talk about disclosure and some of the guests you've had on, like Stephen Greer, Steve Bassett, John Hogue, how these guys, I believe the stuff that they talk about, they're just wrapping it around the wrong model. And I'm going to wrap it around a scientifically possible model versus a scientifically impossible model.
Okay, let's talk about some more proof.
Yeah, and then just last thing is you asked how many people are in our group. Well, there was a survey done in Brazil last year, how many people are questioning the globe, and there's over 10 million in just Brazil alone. So we don't know how many. But on my app, I have the Flat Earth, Sun, Moon, and Zodiac Clock app. There's a feature called the Friend Finder, and on the Friend Finder alone, we have 65,000 people that are actively communicating with each other, and it's growing exponentially. All of that can be found at flatearthdave.com. Check it out. It's a $3 app, piece of cake. Everybody loves it. So, couple proofs. The Earth, they tell us, is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour at the equator. So if you're watching the sunset on the equator, are you falling over backwards at 1,000 miles per hour? Or is the sun just going away and getting lower in the sky due to perspective? Just like if you're standing under a street light, a long street with all street lights, the one over your head, imagine that to be your noon sun, and the one a mile down the road is your sunrise or sunset, because it is at your eye level. And then 2 miles down the road, all of the lights just merge into the horizon, and you can't see anymore.
Of course,
okay?
They tell us gravity keeps us grounded.
Well, they tell us gravity is another thing. Gravity is a theory. Neil deGrasse Tyson himself says that 96% of it is dark matter or dark energy, which no one's ever seen or measured, but it has to exist for gravity to exist. You know, in the scientific method, they say if you have a theory and the theory fails, don't make up stuff to prove your theory. Throw the theory out and come up with a new one. And just really quick on gravity is the Earth is we live in this electromagnetic system. The Earth is stationary. It's not moving. It has what we call a negative charge to it. And everything above the Earth in the air has a positive charge. Well, negative and positive attract each other. And it says, hey, down is this way. Down is this way. That electrostatic force, by the way, is like thousands of times more stronger than what they tell us gravity is. So the whole gravity model is ridiculous. And then, again, if you Google gravity, flat Earth, they're going to show you a man walking on a disc, and he has to start leaning over as he gets away from the center.
Or he's
no
going to
flat
fall
earther
off.
believes that. Yeah, that is a straw man gaslighting, ridiculous argument, because no flat earther believes in that. Down is down due to weight and density. I drop a pen, it's more dense than the air. It goes down to the Earth because the Earth says, hey, down is this way, and things fall. If I let go of a helium balloon, it goes up because it's less dense than the air. If I drop marbles and ping pong balls over a pool, the marbles will go to the bottom of the pool. The ping pong balls will stay on the top, all because of buoyancy and density. Is
flat Earth the wrong phrase to use for all of this?
Absolutely, because flat Earth is triggered. It's like conspiracy theorists. Flat Earth is flat is not a shape. The Earth is measurably, testably level and horizontal. All plumb bobs, that if you hold a string with a weight on it, that's a plumb bob. That's what they use in construction. All of them point down vertical to the horizontal plane. So you have if you hold a plumb bob over resting water, there is a 100% 90-degree angle. And if you had a plumb bob every mile for 1,000 miles, they are all parallel with each other. They're not curving around, pointing to the imaginary center of a spinning ball Earth. None of that makes any sense whatsoever. Here's the thing, George, on our ball, 24,901 miles around, like they tell us, at 100 miles, there should be over a mile of curvature. Over a mile. I'm rounding down, giving it the benefit of the doubt. Submarines can use sonar. They send out a sonar wave, and it hits something, it bounces back, and then they can interpret what it is. They can see other submarines at the bottom of the ocean over 100 miles away. There should be a mountain of dirt in between them over a mile high. And sonar doesn't climb a mountain, dive down the other side, bounce off a submarine, go back over the mountain, come back down, and go back to the sonar operator. Sonar goes straight. Same thing above the water, microwaves. Microwave towers, if you research them, need a line of sight. Well, we have microwave towers going over 300 miles, and they're communicating with each other. That does not work on a ball Earth.
Now, if the planet is not round, if it's not flat as they question us to be, what does it look like?
So George, again, the word planet is like a word that you're not allowed to say on Coast to Coast. You know, it's a bad word. We don't use the word planet because it's a plane. They just kind of added a T to the end. It's a plane. The Earth is the basement of the universe. What's below the Earth? We talked about that. Nobody knows, right? Here's the thing, George. The Big Bang, once upon a time, nothing exploded, created everything, and then all of the rocks turned into round planets, and all of the gases somehow accumulated, turned into giant stars, and left a vacuum in between. That is the most space-jumping, leaping story that anyone can make up. You can't have burning balls of gas, a nuclear furnace, or whatever you want to call a star, in a vacuum. Why did the gases coalesce, and why did the rocks coalesce? None of that makes any sense. We are in an intelligently designed system. If you ask me who designed it, the creator. And that's as far as I go. I don't know. I don't think anyone knows, but everybody has their own relationship with the creator.
Okay, so you don't know what it looks like. So what do we...
Well,
when astronauts... I knew Edgar Mitchell. He was an Apollo 14 astronaut. He went to the moon. I believe that. You believe that, don't you?
Again, the moon landings are it's literally we do not have enough time. But on my app, the Flat Earth, Sun, Moon, and Zodiac Clock app, we have a NASA button. Hit that, look at stuff, analyze it yourself, and make up your own mind. Now, NASA. I'm not saying people are liars or anything like that. I'm saying everything is compartmentalized. If you talk to anybody that works for NASA, they don't know what the person next to them is doing. Compartmentalization. Nobody knows what anyone else is doing. So I don't work for NASA. I'm not there. I don't like to speculate on it. But
I gotta ask you this though, because the can of worms are open. Are you saying we didn't go to the moon?
I'm saying that I don't think the moon is a place that you can go. I mean, there were scientists in the 50s talking about that the moon is plasma and that we can never go to the moon. So with that said, the moon missions, as described, were not accurate.
Well, we could have a large argument on that one, but that's a different show.
We could. That's why I'm trying to avoid the conversation as much as possible. I'm trying to look at stuff that you and I have firsthand experience on. Like, hey, we can see too far. I can zoom in on people across Long Island Sound here and see them sitting at the edge of the water while I'm sitting at the edge of the water, and there should be dozens of feet of curvature in between us, and there's not. I can see them.
So if it's not a round Earth, if it's not a flat Earth, as some of them are saying, and we'll get into that with the big question of why are they deceiving us, but what is it if it's not one of those two?
The Earth, the place that we call Earth, our pond, think of it like a pond in the middle of Kansas, 25 miles around, we'll just say, because the Earth is about 25,000 miles around, so a smaller model, right? And we live in this pond. And guess what? Hey, I want to go explore the rest of Kansas. I'm sorry, that's against the rules. You're not allowed to explore. No country, no person, no corporation is allowed to explore beyond 60 degrees south without a chaperone, right? No one is allowed to explore Antarctica, right? Back in the 1950s, Admiral Byrd supposedly flew out over Antarctica, said he found land beyond the pole. That's weird, on a ball.
He went
that
into
is
the
bigger
center,
than the United States, filled with resources, fuel, coal, uranium, everything, and no people are on it, no animals are on it. Well, hey, that sounds like a good place to dig up some fuel. But nope, Antarctic Treaty goes in, a dozen countries immediately signed on, and now every major country in the world has signed, and nobody can even question this treaty until the year 2041. So 1959 to 2041. It's the longest standing treaty ever, but the whole world, for some reason, agrees. Go ahead, deforest the Amazon. That's fine, but don't go to Antarctica because we have to protect the snow and the penguins.
Why the deception on the planet? Why not you just come out and say science would be able to ascertain easily? Why not just come out and say, hey, the planet is shaped like this, folks? And that's the way it is. Why don't they tell us that?
It's about control, George. You know, if you put a person in a cage and it was a small cage, they're not going to like it. But if you put them in a cage so big that they don't know they're in a cage, they're not going to have a problem. And our cage, the shoreline of Antarctica, is our cage. They don't want us exploring beyond it. Now, anything beyond the shoreline of Antarctica, I'm speculating. But I'm speculating on things that are physically possible. I'm speculating on things that there's stories from the past about people who have gone beyond the shoreline of Antarctica and have discovered other worlds, other continents outside of the Antarctic Circle. So get your mind off the globe, get your mind out of space. The Earth is the Earth plane is the foundation of the world. We're in Kansas on this lake, and guess what? There's other lakes in Kansas, right? But they don't want us going there. And in those other lakes are other continents, other worlds. This is just speculation, but there's tons of evidence for that. And again, on a radio show, this is really hard to break globe programming. But once you understand that, you know, if there's more land beyond Antarctica, what's another word for more? We'll say extra. What's another word for land? We'll say territory. So put that together in a word, extra terra. Guess what? If somebody came from the extra terra outside of Antarctica, beyond in that outer area, we might call them an extraterrestrial from the outer space. Right here. Let's talk about the distances to stars. George, the closest star is 4.5 light years. That's about 25 trillion miles. Do you know how big 1 trillion is?
That's a long way.
Yeah, so let me ask you a question. You know how long 1 trillion seconds is? Take a guess. Stab in the dark. 1 trillion seconds.
That's got to be years away.
Take a guess. Want to take a guess?
I wouldn't even guess.
All right, it's 31,000 years. 1 trillion seconds. Let that sink in. It's 31,000 years. So if you were traveling at a mile per second, which is faster than any human has ever gone, for 31,000 years, you are 1/25th of the way to the closest star. You have to do that 24 more times just to get to the closest star, and the other ones are magnitudes farther.
It's a big universe, isn't it?
Well, that's what they tell us. They put our mind, they've diluted our mind into infinite space, when in reality, we are at the center of creation. So think about this. Think about Roswell. Think about the stuff Dr. Stephen Greer talks about and Steve Bassett. They talk about extraterrestrials coming, crashing in Roswell. You think they're going to come all that distance and then crash in Roswell? Or are they coming from the outer space, 10,000, 20,000 miles away?
That they could
across
have.
the Earth plane. And then they come here in and out. They can come in and out all the time, back and forth.
Some say they came from the hollow Earth.
Well, that's another thing. I think the hollow Earth is just another way to keep you imprisoned in a sphere, when in reality, I believe we live on an infinite or extended plane. I don't know how far it goes. I don't know how it terminates, but neither does anyone in heliocentric model. You know, we have expanding space into nothingness. So that's a leap of faith. For me, continents on the other side of Antarctica, scientifically possible. Lots of evidence for it. There's a book called The Iron Republic. It's on my app in the book section. And check that out. It's about a politician that went through, bought a ship, went through the Antarctica, got lost, found another advanced world just outside of Antarctica, lived there for years, and then came back. And it's an amazing story. It's written as true. It rings true to me. But whether it's true or not, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, they were talking about more land beyond Antarctica, across the Earth plane.
So when you go across this so-called lake of planet Earth, when you get to the end of the lake, what's left?
Well, there's more land. But Antarctica, they tell us, is just this little continent, 11,000 miles in circumference at the bottom of a ball. But the last person to try to circumnavigate Antarctica was Captain Cook, And it took him 3.5 years, and he clocked over 60,000 miles. Well, think about the globe. The equator is only 25,000 miles around. Well, Antarctica, as you start going south, it should get smaller and smaller, but he went 60,000 miles. Well, now think of the Earth as a lake. Antarctica is the exterior of our pond lake, and it's about 60,000 miles would be right.
But you can't fall off the edge because there is no edge, right?
Can you fall off the edge of a lake?
Nope.
Right. And so, what's beyond there? Saying, well, what's beyond the edge of the land? What's beyond the other lakes? I don't know. I haven't been there.
We're going to take a short break, David, and come back and take phone calls with you in a moment. All of David's websites and material linked up at coasttocoastam.com. He's got a podcast. It's called the FlatEarthPodcast.com. His website, the Next Level 2022.com, is linked up at Coast to Coast AM as well. That's his new movie called The Next Level, which he claims if you watch it, you will be convinced about what we're talking about tonight. Much more to come with your calls and more coming up on Coast to Coast AM. Up next, your phone calls with David Weiss, who does not believe the planet is round. Your thoughts when we come back on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. George Noory with you, David Weiss with us. We'll get to your calls in a second here. David, tell folks about the movie, the Next Level movie.
Yeah, so the first movie was called Level, the movie, and this one is called The Next Level, and it's The Next Level 2022. It's basically took a bunch of researchers, myself, and we basically lay out, why they're hiding flat Earth, what flat Earth is, and it's a movie made for people new to the topic, and just check it out. Once you see it, your mind will open, and then if you have the courage to keep looking, you'll find an amazing truth that was within you that you've been brainwashed not to be able to see. We're so lost in this heliocentric planet that it's hard to see through it. But once you see through it, it makes total sense. And I want to call out to all of your guests, anyone out there that's in the UFO community. They're afraid to look at flat Earth because they think it negates all of their work. It doesn't. It enhances it. For people like Stephen Greer, Stephen Bassett, and everything, you want to talk about disclosure? Disclosure isn't light years away. It's thousands of miles away. It's here. It's within our lifetime. It could be tomorrow. It could be the next day. It's not going to, you don't have these infinite time lengths. If we want to go to the next star, it's going to take generations, at incredible, impossible speeds. It's right here. It's happening now. And so if we keep looking up into the sky for disclosure, we're never going to find it. Disclosure is here. It's out south across the plains.
When you're out and you talk to people and you tell them your belief system, what do they say?
That's a great question, George. And it used to be, 2014, 2015, 2016, they'd say you're crazy. They would laugh at you. They'd mock you. But now you mention flat Earth to somebody, they go, that's interesting. I heard this. Can you explain this? Hey, one of the greatest proofs for the Earth is, think about this, George, and it has to do with a very recent news event. We're spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. We're orbiting in the heliocentric model the Earth, the sun, at 66,600 miles an hour. That's a speed you can't even fathom. And then we're also, while doing that, we're chasing the sun at almost 500,000 miles per hour. So we're corkscrewing and spinning through an infinite universe, and we're traveling over 4.5 billion miles a year, never to return to where we were before. But the Georgia Guidestones had a little hole drilled in the middle stone, and if you look through it, there is the star Polaris, our North Star. How can we be traveling in all these different directions, traveling infinite distances, crazy distances, and that star just always remains in that hole? And the heliocentric answer is, well, it's so far away that parallax, the moving of things in the distance, doesn't matter. That's ridiculous. But even with their story that it's too far away, the heliocentric model claims that the Earth is precessing and that we'll have a new North Star in 2,000 years or something like that. We had one 2,000 years ago. Well, the Georgia Guidestones have been up for over 40 years. It should have moved a full degree out of that circle, which is a huge distance. There's no way it would be in that circle a day, let alone 40 years. But it was there, and now it's gone.
Somebody blew it up.
Yeah,
Crazy.
not sure. There's a lot of theories going on there. What happened, but I don't believe the mainstream narrative that some hacker went in there and blew it up. But
Before we go to calls, tell us about this Greek mathematician from 100,000 years ago who figured out the circumference of planet Earth.
So Aristophanes, 2,000 years ago in Greece, he figured, hey, one day I saw the sun. This is the story. Reflecting in the bottom of a well, which means that the sun on a certain day of the year in where he was directly overhead. So he theorized, hey, if I send my buddy 500 miles away and he put a stick in the ground straight up and down, we can measure the length of that shadow, do some really good math, and figure out the circumference of the Earth. And Carl Sagan put that into everyone's minds in the show Cosmos, and it's like the number one thing that that kids are indoctrinated with, that we live on a globe. That math is perfectly good math. The shadow length at the two different locations. Aristophanes had no shadow, and he had a shadow, and Carl Sagan tells us that can only happen if the Earth is spherical. Well, that's not true. In the flat Earth model, we have a small local sun, just as we see it. If you take just take two beer bottles and put them on a table a couple feet apart and hold the light directly over one of them, that one has no shadow. The other one has a shadow. You can do some math and figure out the sphericity of that table, which is flat. That just shows you that you're interpreting things wrong. Math is real, but it depends on how you use it. So Aristophanes doesn't prove that the Earth is a globe, nor does he prove that the Earth is flat. It works on both models.
Interesting. Let's take some calls. Let's go to Terry in Abilene, Texas, to get us started. Welcome to the show. Hi, Terry.
Hello. How are y'all doing tonight?
Great. Good to have you with us.
Thank you, sir. I have a few things to say real quick. John Glenn was the first astronaut to circle the Earth. I think he would wanted to be remembered being the first astronaut to prove the Earth was flat, if that was true. Another thing, there's 24 time zones around the world at 15-degree medians. If what you were saying was correct, there would only be 6 time zones. Another thing is astronauts on the International Space Station, they're monitoring the Earth constantly moving around at all times. So I hate to say it, but the Earth is round. Sorry.
All right, that's okay. That's your choice. And then your thoughts, David?
Let me address that. So time zones actually work perfectly on a flat Earth. Think of the sun as the hand on a 24-hour clock. It goes around once a day. The sun is local. Just like standing on that long street of streetlights, if I'm standing under one light, that's my noon sun. The one at the end of the road that's merging in with the horizon, not at the end of the road, just like a half a mile down the road, it merges with the horizon. It's at my eye level, and I can't see it. Well, let's say you were standing 5 miles down the road under a light. I can't see you. You can't see me. I can't see the lights that are near you. You can't see the lights that are near me. The light that's over your head, that's your noon sun. The sun circles around like a big clock. Check out my app, flatearthdave.com, and it goes around, and that's how time zones work. It works perfectly well. As the sun rises here in the Northeast, it's not rising in California, but it will 3 hours later as it moves across, circling around in between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn.
Tell us about the app, by the way, how you developed it.
Yeah, so I made the app because when I was talking to people, I'm trying to explain things. I was like, I wish I had a little model. So I built the app just for myself, and I showed it to people, and everyone goes, wow, that's really good. Where do I get that app? So I decided to publish it. I published it, and it was free, and it was a basic app, and everyone loved it. They're like, hey, can you add this? Can you add that? Can you add this? Can you add that? And that started costing money. So I said, you know what? I'll put it for $3. If I make enough money, I can just dump it back into the app. Well, that was 3.5 years ago. I've put tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars into this app, and it does everything. And now with Google censorship, it's amazing. You Google flat Earth, you find nothing. You find garbage. It's all that's nonsense that's fed to you. So on the app, every day there's a featured video, and I have a challenge. Watch the featured video every day for 2 weeks. At the end of that 2 weeks, if you think the Earth is a globe, send me that one proof, just one, and you win 3 Bitcoins. But that's been out there for 3 years. No one has been able to do it yet. But before you send it to me, there's a frequently asked questions button. Like, you know, hey, what about ships over the horizon? What about sunsets? What about seasons? What about circumnavigation? Click that first. Watch the videos. Don't just believe a video. Watch the video that will open a door so you go, oh, now I understand how that works.
Next up, let's go to
so much more.
Let's go to Bill in Los Angeles. No, where is he now? He's in Colorado. Welcome. You're all over the map, Bill.
Yeah, hey, I'm truck driving from coast to coast. Hey, I have a question. Look, because you mentioned this term gaslighting, all right? That's getting thrown around a lot. And I'm actually from Washington State. And we had an incident with this organization called Foundation for Individual Rights in Education. Okay, they did a commercial on national television, on cable television, just the other day. So their profile is increasing. And my question is, and you know, I don't want to insult anybody, so I'm just going to use myself as an example. Like, I'm a sci-fi fan, right? And they interviewed somebody from the Space Force the other day, a cadet, and she said she hates being compared to people that watch Star Trek, her word, or Star Wars. She grew up watching the moon rotate on YouTube, right? Now, the moon doesn't actually rotate. It's in tidal lock. It revolves. And the Star Trek and Star Wars, as she says, which I'm a big fan, are not really science fiction. They are fantasy. All right, even I admit that. And then I felt kind of ashamed of myself for kind of like having hostile feelings towards her, right? Like, I mean, I was, because, you know, I know what she meant. She meant rotate as in, or, you know, around the earth. But, you know, technically it revolves. So at what point does this just become being contrarian just for the sake of pushing, I don't know, to demean people? At what point, like, technically, nothing is really round. It's a spheroid. It's spherical. It's not perfectly round. The Earth is not perfectly round. Most objects in space are oblate spheroids. They're oblong.
Any comments, David?
Yeah, so the saying that most objects are oblate spheroids, well, you don't know. You can't see. If you look at, you know, something in the distance, it looks spherical. What was the question he had was, what was the question again at the beginning?
Let's go back for Bill. Bill, what was your other question?
Yeah, at what point is it just contrarian? I mean, there was another flat Earth guy on that said that he was just trying to show that if you reject the flat Earth, then you reject the Bible. I mean, that's what he said.
Let me answer that. So I'm not. There are over 200 verses in the Bible. I'm not the Bible guy, but and I don't use that because if you don't believe in the Bible, then it's useless. I looked at the science. We're doing moon measurements, and it's hard to describe on the show, but the videos are on my app where the moon rotates. Now I know it's rotate. You say it's tidally locked, but it spins like a clock, depending on where you are in different speeds and different directions. And that we modeled that. That only works on a flat Earth. Again, hard to describe on a radio show. And just going back to the previous caller, the time zones you talked about and the International Space Station. Think about this, George. The International Space Station is one of the most technological advanced construction projects ever. There's not a single photo or video of it being built. None whatsoever. It would be the most filmed construction project ever, but there's not a single photo or video. And now China supposedly has a space station up there. Again, no photos, no video. And there's so many screw-ups that they're doing on there where they're faking stuff. They had a glass of water on the space station the other day. How does a glass of water sit on a table in the space station? There's so many errors, but on the app under the NASA button, check that out. There's tons and tons of videos there. And also the live streams, if you watch the live streams, they're not live streams. We've watched the light that crosses the sky that they say is the space station, and they're live, and then we go to their live feed. Well, it's showing total clouds when it just went over a blue sky. Well, they're not showing us anything real. They'll never show you a live feed at nighttime because at nighttime you go, oh, look, there's a stadium. The New York Jets are playing there, you know, and it won't be there. They can't sync it up at night. They just show you nonsense during the day.
Next up, we go to Craig, truck driving in Canada. Welcome to the show. Hey, Craig.
Hey. Yeah, I agree with one of the previous guests, and you'll understand. The sun rises in the east, sets in the west. during the equinox, how does the sun get from the west back to the east?
Okay, very, very good. So the sun, the sun, moon, and stars, all, no matter where you are in the world, rise from in the east and set in the west. You know, the people say clockwise, counterclockwise. It's just because you turned around when you're in the outer southern area. So it just think about it. Again, if you look at my app, you watch the hand go around. The sky is a perfect clock. So the sun just circles around. During our summer, it's going over a tighter circle called the Tropic of Cancer, and that's when us in the inner north have summer because the sun is closer to us. It's higher in the sky because it's closer, and then it spirals outwards for 6 months all the way out to the Tropic of Capricorn, which goes over Australia. It's that outer south area, and it's lower in the sky, just like those streetlights are lower in the sky, the ones that are farther away. So, George, if you and I were sitting outside here in the Northeast, freezing our butts off in the middle of the winter, and we're 20 feet apart, and somebody's holding a big heat lamp 15 feet over your head, you're going to look directly up at that. That's your summer sun. It's going to warm you. I'm going to be looking at it. It's lower in the sky. I'm pointing at it, and it's like 45 degrees for me. Now, if that person walked over to me, keeping it at the same height, you would see it get lower. I would see it get higher as it came to me, and then it would warm me when it's over me. Seasons actually prove the Earth is flat. Again, hit the seasons button in the app, and you will see what I'm talking about.
We've got Linda in Spokane, Washington, west of the Rockies. Hey, Linda.
Hey, hi, George. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
This guest is really interesting, David. I agree with him because in the beginning chapters, first couple chapters of the Bible, it said that God, whether it's he, she, or they, it says he created the firmament to separate the waters. And it doesn't say he created a round ball or a sphere or anything. He created a land mass, and I think maybe the sky is water and down below us is water. Maybe we're some ship on the ocean, who knows? But anyway, Baal is very close to the word ball. So I think this is all a complete deception that we've had to grow up with and be taught all our lives.
You got a believer there, David.
Well, it's again, belief is the enemy of knowing. George, you believe that I live on the East Coast, but you don't know it until you actually research it. And people are very lazy. That's a human nature. Is like if there's an easier way to do something, people will take it. So belief is easy. You can believe anything you want, it takes no effort, and you can go take a nap. If you want to know something, you got to take time, you got to take effort, you got to think, right? But they don't teach us to do that in school. They teach us to memorize and regurgitate. And if you do it really well, you can become a teacher of the next generation.
I mean, it is true that my belief system of a round Earth is based on a few pictures taken by astronauts when they were going to the moon and coming back. I've never seen the planet from afar on my own, so there's that belief system. You're right.
Right. And in the app there, I believe there's a Photos of Earth section. And, Jaya, Photos of Earth from space, watch that stuff. Again, don't believe anything I'm telling you. I'm pointing towards things that you can go verify yourself. Right? You can't verify anything from outer space. You can't verify any of that, but you can disqualify it. We cannot see Polaris. It's too far. 433 light years, you couldn't see it at a light week away, okay? It would be scientifically impossible to see, but we can see it. Therefore, I'm not telling you what a star is. I'm telling you that it's not what they're telling us. The stars that we see, there's two sizes in the sky, star size and sun and moon size. Sun and moon are the same size, but in the heliocentric model, one's 400 times bigger and 400 times farther, and they happen to be the same size. And then they line up, and that's called an eclipse, a solar eclipse. That's crazy. The chances of that happening once are so small that you can't even fathom it. But guess what? They happen every year. And guess what, George? Every 18 years, the cycle of eclipses repeats. like clockwork.
David, we're going to come back and take final calls with you in just a moment, right here on Coast to Coast AM. On our next Coast to Coast program, we're going to talk about how happiness and spirituality keep us in good health. And then later on, we're talking about the spirit world on Coast to Coast. And we are back with David Weiss. David, tell us about the censorship again. Why do you think it's there?
Well, George, it's all about control. If people realize where they lived, who they are, if they realize that nobody has control over them except in their imagination, the people that are running this world, the real rulers of this world, who I don't believe are the people that we see. I believe those are the minions of the people that are really controlling the world. They wouldn't put up with it. You know, I told you the story of the Iron Republic. These the lands that they found out there. The story was that those people lived here in the 1600s, but there was tyranny going on, so they left. They went to outer, freer lands. Imagine, George, if the world wasn't running short, if it wasn't overpopulated, if there was more land than you can possibly even imagine. Imagine what that would do to human, your spirit, to your freedom. They don't want that. They want to keep us here. They want us believing that we're trapped either on a globe or inside a dome. I don't believe we're trapped in a dome. I believe that there's more land out there. And here's the thing. I don't have proof of it. There's lots of evidence, but we should have the right to go explore, right? They've demonized airships, you know, with Hindenburg. You can't use hydrogen anymore. And guess who owns all of the major helium companies in the world? NASA.
Really?
I encourage people absolutely. And NASA is the largest consumer of helium in the world. So I encourage people on my app, on the web button, hit the rockets, balloons button. NASA has tens of thousands of balloons holding up satellites. Balloons. How come they don't tell us about this?
If Jeff Bezos came up to you and said, look, I want to take you up into space. I want you to look back at planet Earth and tell me what you think. Would you go?
It would be an interesting question because I don't believe that anybody is ever on those rockets. If you look at when he launched Captain Kirk, William Shatner up, think about this, George. William Shatner, what's he, 90-something years old? He's been overweight.
91.
91. They launch him, incredible G-forces, going up where he's floating, you know, in space for 4.5 minutes. There's no video of it. I mean, there's 2 seconds here, 3 seconds there. Where are the 4.5 minutes of him floating? And then it comes down and slams. If you watch some of my interviews where I show it slams into the ground. Slams, right? No paramedics, no doctors, no nothing. Just a bunch of wives, Jeff Bezos, a couple of no-name reporters, no medical people. I used to run a school carnival, and we had to have ambulances there just in case somebody hurt themselves, where none of this makes any sense. And again, George, going down that road and realizing, wow, this deception's so big, they're like, how could they keep a secret like that? It's not that many people need to know. And once you understand what this deception is, then you can start seeing it. And a lot of things unwind. But to your listeners, like during the break, you had Michael Salas was on there talking about UFOs. If he would just talk to us, any of your listeners, any of your guests that are in the UFO community, come talk to us. Your model, your experiences, your evidence only work on a flat Earth. Let us show you. We can do a live show together. We can have a private conversation together. We just want to show you what we see, and then you make up your own mind. So reach out, flatearthdave.com. There's a Contact Dave button there. There's a Book Dave for a Show button. Check it out.
You know, Bill Shatner would pop you in the nose if you told him he didn't go into space.
There's a quote. William Shatner was interviewed, and someone asked about, I forget the exact quote, what's the difference between, William Shatner basically, his answer was, there's no difference between science fiction and science. It's all the same thing. So William Shatner knows. William Shatner knows what happened. William Shatner did not go into space. And again, I wasn't there. I'm not involved. But if you watch the actual launch, George, how come we can never get a single video of a launch? It edits 6 or 7. Edit. Different angle, so nobody can figure out what's going on.
You're not saying, though, that we've never gone into space, are you?
George, again, once you understand what space is, you have to make up that decision for yourself.
I mean, I knew an astronaut, Edgar Mitchell. He went up there. He was on the moon. I believe the guy.
And you know what? And from his point of view, he might be telling the truth. I wasn't there. I didn't meet him. I didn't see it. So again, we're talking about testimony. Do you think, and now I'm not calling it Edgar Mitchell a liar at all, but do you think a man is capable of lying or being deceived and believing something is true when it's not?
Oh, everybody is.
Of course.
Everybody.
Yeah, of course. So again, Edgar Mitchell, who, is a Freemason, told you a story. And if you go back and look at the evidence on the app in the images section, go look at the lunar lander. George, how can you have high pressure in a flimsy little structure like that in a space vacuum? It doesn't work. How come they've never taken an astronaut on Earth in a spacesuit and put them in the NASA's vacuum chamber, which doesn't even create a full vacuum like space? And the answer is they tried it once, but the guy almost died because his mouth, his tongue started boiling, and they can't do it. If you're in space, you should blow up like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man in your astronaut suit. But that doesn't happen. They're in these flimsy suits. I mean, if you look at it, the live space station feed, watch it. Watch the horizon. It flexes. Watch any of the SpaceX launches. That every time they change scenes, the horizon's curved. It's less curved. It's flat. It's concave. They're showing you a concave lens. It's all deception, unfortunately.
Back to the phones. Nick in Las Vegas, first-time caller. Hello, Nick. Go ahead, sir.
Hey, George. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. I hope you are, too.
Hey, I'm doing good. This guy's I think this guy's a kind of a quacky kind of a guy because he says you can't go to Antarctica like the common man can't go there. But I'm looking at all kinds of pictures of cruises of people down there with penguins and all this kind of stuff. And he says nobody can go down to Antarctica. I can go on a cruise if I had the money. I don't have the money, but I can get on a cruise and go down there. And he said the largest hole was 8,000 deep, 8,000 feet deep. Well, there's a hole in Russia called Mel's Hole that's 20,000 feet deep.
All right, what do you say, Davey? Go ahead.
So I'm talking about the same hole. It's just short of 8 miles. I didn't say 8,000 feet, 8 miles. If I said 8,000 feet, that was a mistype. And I never said that you can't go to Antarctica. There's about 100 companies that you can book a trip to Antarctica, which is just that little island off of Santiago, South America. And you cross the Drake's Passage there. It's the closest point. And you're not allowed to independently explore out there. But here's the funny thing about those 100 companies. They're all owned by the same guy. Why does one guy control all of the tourism of Antarctica? And to go there, the minimum price is like $10,000, I think. Maybe sometimes like the last minute they'll fill up some seats, but it's like $10,000, $30,000, $50,000 to go for 3 days. It's a long journey, and they don't let you off the ship very much. Let you show you some ice. They're bringing you to that little tip of Antarctica, which is tiny compared to Antarctica. It's a speck, but it's bigger than some countries. So you see ice, you see penguins, you see everything that he said, but you're not allowed to independently. No one has ever gone to the South Pole and then gone over the other side. No one's gone from Santiago across the South Pole and popped up in New Zealand or Australia. It hasn't happened. They've gone to the South Pole supposedly, but then they turn around and come back. Why didn't they continue across?
I wonder what John Kerry was doing there, who was the special presidential envoy for climate. I wonder what he was up to.
On Election Day, he went to Antarctica. Maybe he was going there getting his marching orders. I don't know because I wasn't there. But there's a lot of mysteries going on in Antarctica, and I'm saying I just want the right to go explore beyond Antarctica.
Chris in Los Angeles, take it away, Chris. Go ahead.
Hi, George. Hi, Dave. First-time caller, long-time listener, and I'm so happy that you're talking about this topic.
Thank you.
I just want to say that I'm a truth seeker above all, and all I ever look for is the truth. Nothing excites me more. So when you bring up these topics are topics that I've been researching as well for a long time. I'm not completely sold, but there's a lot of compelling information. And the things that make me ask questions are things that have questions. For example, why is it that we've never seen a regular picture of the Earth? According to NASA, all of these pictures that we've seen of the Earth are composite images. And I see that, and I'm like, well, why? what's so hard about getting a picture? And and when you're talking about Antarctica, you're exactly right. People can take a small trip to Antarctica, but they can't go inside of Antarctica and explore and get to New Swaziland and things of that nature. And there's a lot of lore behind Antarctica, and I kind of have the same opinion about John Kerry's trip and all the other individuals that go there as well. And I mainly have these opinions because I'm such a studier of Dr. Sala's deeper work.
All right, let's go to you, David, because you sound like you have a backer there, David.
Oh, there's lots of people out there. So the photos of Earth, absolutely, there are no photos of Earth. Now, people believe there's photos of Earth, but NASA admits there aren't any. And then also, if you Google Antarctica from space, it's all cartoons. Antarctica, you can see pictures of the shoreline in some areas where they have, there's a little town and stuff going on there in the base. But they won't show you what the center of Antarctica looks like because it's not. It's a composite. It's all of the edges wrapped around a ball. Before we run out of time, let me just quickly get to the why. And I touched on it before. But if there's more land, well, that's a good reason why. It's about control. And also, when you see that this world is not from a Big Bang, that you see that it's described as flat, level, and horizontal, that means it's intelligently designed. That means there's a creator. I'm not religious. I'm not prescribing to anything. I'm just saying it's intelligently designed. And when you understand that you're at the center of creation, when you understand that your thoughts create your reality and they're steering your thoughts with the news, which is an acronym for North, East, West, South. They're steering your thoughts. And when you watch the news, it puts you in a state of fear, false evidence appearing real. They're using your mind, your energy. The heliocentric system is the Matrix. Remember that great movie? It's a documentary.
Great movie.
It's an analogy. The Matrix is a prison for your mind. If you believe you live on a ball in unreachable infinite space, then your thoughts are limited. Your creativity is limited. Your belief in resources and abundance is limited. But in reality, we have infinite abundance. There's infinite water here. You can stick a seed that's 100 years old into the ground. Water will fall from the sky, and food will come out of the ground, right? But people have forgotten this. People don't understand that we are free beings, right? There's really one law, George, natural law. Don't hurt anybody else. That's it. And the rest is just about control. God, or the creator, then man, then government. Government has climbed above man, and they're trying to climb above the creator.
Let's go to one more call. Bob in Indiana. Squeeze you in here, Bob. Go ahead.
Boy, I sure appreciate it. I'm about ready to have a stroke.
Don't do that on us.
Well, how about this theory? The Earth is a square block. How about that theory?
Is that
your best blow proof?
Do you believe that?
I don't believe it. I believe it's round. Blow a bubble. Make a bubble. It's physics.
What do you think of that, David, as we wrap things up?
Yeah, the Earth isn't a bubble. Make a ball of water bigger than a drop. Make a gallon into a ball of water without a container. That's impossible. Here's the thing. People get super triggered, and then they throw out insults. They throw out ridiculous ideas. All I say is, if you're so triggered, come collect my 3 Bitcoins. One proof of the globe.
That's 60 grand, my friend, isn't it?
Yeah, it used to be a lot more. But it's no problem. But here's the thing. I'm confident that if you try it, you will end up in the same chair where I am. I tried to prove the globe, and I became a flat earther. And it's only the people that refuse to look. It's only the people that say, that's crazy. He's nuts. He lives in his mother's basement. He didn't go to school. Don't pay attention. Don't focus on any of that. Focus on some facts. Try to prove the globe. Try to prove the globe. And again, you may think that you proved it. Boats over the horizon, Sticks and Shadows, Seasons. But go on the app, hit the frequently asked questions button, watch those videos there, and learn the truth. FlatEarthDave.com. All my stuff is there. Check out the movie, The Next Level. I guarantee it. On FlatEarthDave.com, there's so much information, so many resources. Check it out. The app's available only for iPhones and Android phones and tablets.
And what do you want people to look for when they watch The Next Level movie?
Just watch The Next Level. You watch that, and then you're basically gonna email me going, what do I watch next? Get the app, watch the videos on the app. There's so much information on there, George. It's amazing. It'll keep you busy forever. And here's the one thing that all flat earthers have in common: we are never bored for a second. This world is so interesting. It's so amazing. And disclosure is just a couple thousand miles away, not in infinite space. Any of your guests, please reach out to us. Have a private conversation with us. Let us show you how your work is much better than you think it is.
Thank you, David, for being on the program. Your websites are all linked up at coasttocoastam.com. For Dan Galante, Tom Danheiser, Lisa Lyon, Lex Lonehood, Sean Ladouceur, Timothy Banal, Stephanie Smith, Chris Boros, George Knapp, and Ian Punnett, I'm George Noory, somewhere out there on Coast to Coast AM. We'll see you on our next edition. Until then, be safe, everyone.